Hey y'all, it's Kalia Monique. My first name's Kalia, my middle name's Monique. It's Kalia Monique. Today is going to be all about annotating. How do I annotate my books? Why do I annotate my books? What do I use to annotate my books? You know, just annotating. It was very humbling for me to count out how many books of mine I have not yet read. I don't want to talk about it, okay? I don't want to talk about it. It's just so exhausting. Oh my god, no pictures, please. Yelling at them, just leave, get out, like leave now. We don't need to go through all this. Why? Why are you heading towards trauma on purpose? I love you too. You're literally sunshine as a person, but thank you. Thank you so much. Now this is a video that has been highly requested. In fact, from my very early in my channel, the second video I ever uploaded, which was my booktube newbies tag, this video had been requested. And I have been meaning to do this video since then, but I just kept telling myself, okay, I would love to do that, but once I have more examples of how I'm annotating now, I'll do it. And then my annotating evolved. And so I was like, okay, well, once I have more examples of this version of me annotating, and I still don't have enough examples, but that's okay. Now, annotating for me has definitely evolved a lot over the years since I have begun. And so, yeah, I definitely wanted to talk to you guys about how I annotate, why I annotate, and just all things annotation. Annotating, and you know the words. So first off, let's start off with my tools and my supplies for annotating. So first up, all my annotating tools are in this handy dandy. It's actually a bookmark tin, but I use it for my annotation tools. I have recently changed some of the supplies in here, so it's actually kind of full at the moment, and I will probably be looking for a new pouch soon. Before I was using this tin, I was using just a regular pencil pouch, and it's looking as though I'm going to have to return to using that. I just would prefer it to be something small and thin like this, because this is a lot easier to travel with and like transport. But ultimately it's okay. It's about whatever works for me. And a broken tin definitely doesn't work for me. So next up, what is most important to me is definitely my tabs. My favorite tabs to use are these. These are actually from the Dollar Tree. I have yet to find a link online to tabs that are exactly like this. There are the Amazon pack that is like 6 different tabs. I don't have any fuller, full, I guess, sheets of tabs to describe those to you, but you know, they're like the standard tabs that like everyone uses. Those I don't mind. They're definitely not bad at all, but I personally use a lot of colors during my tabbing, and the 6 just aren't enough. The 6 count of the tabs do not have a red, and red is actually a very important color for me in my tabbing, which I will get into explaining later on. But yeah, red is really important to me. And granted, I could change it to another color that would allow me to use the 6 tabs and it'd be fine, because there's always 2 different shades of purple. Like, there's a violet and then like a purple, which granted, I could always substitute that color for one of those, but I don't want to. And there's red to me just has like this special feeling that I will explain when I get to what each color means. And then also, along with that, orange is one of the colors that I use the absolute most when it comes to my tabbing. And there are two different oranges on here. With the 6-pack of the tabs, orange was always the color I ran out of first. It was kind of like a tie between orange and pink when it came to like me running out of tabs with the 6 count of tabs. So I really do prefer the ones from the dollar store. Now, the thing about these is they run out super duper fast. I remember the first time I got these, I got a 2-pack, and then when my packs were running low, I went to go get more and they didn't have any. And then I got nervous and was like, okay, that's fine. I'll go look online to find the same tabs. That's when I found out that there was only the 6 count of the tabs. So I was like, okay, I'll just wait. And then they still hadn't restocked, or at least people were like grabbing them sooner than I could go get me a restock of the tabs. So I ended up having to settle for the 6 count of the like basic Amazon annotating tabs. Ever since then, anytime I go to the Dollar Tree, I go to the section where these tabs are, and if they have them, I stock up. Like, I haven't run out of these in quite some time now, because every time I see them, I stock up. The idea of not having these makes me very upset. Some more tabs that I really like, but I haven't gotten the chance to use yet. I do have some like aesthetically pleasing tabs. I keep them in this little thing, and they're actually overflowing, or like I can't quite close the thing. So we have these like rounded ones. That color pattern I call Dark Academia, or like fall, because you know, you saw what it looks like. We also have like these brighter colors. Or no, these aren't the bright ones. I'm sorry. We have like these purple and grays. These are the brighter tabs. And then of course, we just go into the normal squared ones. These are the rounded ones of the colors. But you get what colors they are. I would say my least favorite options that I have, I don't like the rounded ones. I genuinely don't. I don't think I'm going to use these very often. I had no choice but to get them because they are part of the tabs. But yeah, I probably won't use these. I don't like how it looks, and for me, annotating has a lot to do with aesthetics, and if I think that something is aesthetically pleasing. And yeah, that's genuinely just how my brain processes things, so I can't help it. I have tried to settle with annotating before, but if it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing for me, my brain will not process what I want it to process. I have tried, it does not work for me. And I think that that's a very important thing that comes with annotating. You really have to figure out what works for you, because ultimately you should be annotating for yourself and for what works for you, and not what other people might think about your annotating. So maybe I do value aesthetics more than the average person, but that's okay, because that's what I need out of my annotations. I need it to look aesthetically pleasing to me, to my eye. I do use stick-it notes. What? I do use post-it notes. Not very often, I would say. Like, honestly, quite rarely. I mainly save post-it notes for, what's a good example for a post-it note? It's actually right by me. I use post-it notes more often for books that I do like dedicated videos for, and do it for the purposes of discussing the book to you all about. I do not use post-it notes very often, so if you would see here, I just passed one. So these ones that are sticking out, I can actually push down into the page, but it's just like, hey, come back when you are talking about the book, come back to this page. You had a note that you really wanted to discuss. And I usually push them down in the book only because do you see how this is bended up here? Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like how messy it gets when there are a lot up there. So you see for this, I'm going to try and like hold it back so you guys can't read what I said. It was originally up here, and then I reported back to the vlog about what my thoughts were on the specific scene, and then I pushed the tab down here. And actually, I moved this down on the page, but usually when it comes to tabs, I will say I'll put them, oh, well, that's why. I'll put them at the end of the chapter, because another reason that I really do not like using post-it notes is because when I do reread this, or when I do come back to this scene, because that is why I annotate for the purposes of going back to this part. When I do that, I'm going to have to lift this sticky note up and then read it, and then I'll put it down, and then I will continuously be picking it up and placing it back down, and eventually it won't be sticky anymore and I'll start losing them. And there is nothing more frustrating than having post-it notes falling all around in your book. Like, genuinely, I cannot stand it. Also, a great example, I do annotate books that have stenciled edges, and I do this because, again, I like annotating and I like my books. This is definitely something I have struggled with in the past, or specifically when reading the Jade City. I didn't want to annotate and like mess up the stenciled edges, but it was impacting my reading. I wasn't able to jot down how I was feeling. I wasn't able to do anything because I was trying to preserve the stenciled edges. So I have for this book just annotate or just tabbed around the stenciled, but like sometimes I don't care. It just, again, it's what I like seeing. Like, at first I was scared that I'd be ruining the stencil, but like looking at this, I'm just so happy of what it looks like. I feel like, wow, I really did feel things towards this book. It makes me happy, and looking at the other two, I'm like, I just want to read them now. I want to make them all look like this. This was a special moment for me reading this book. Next up, I have my pens and highlighters. Now, the highlighters are actually something that I had to change literally yesterday. I was using the Staedtler highlighters, and they are literally all dying in this very moment. I'm not even joking. My orange, I have to like cross it a bunch of times. My green, I have to do it a bunch of times. Like, it's, yeah, they're all running out at this moment. So I actually ended up buying some mile liners, and I can tell you right off the bat, I actually enjoy these more. These, now I don't have a problem with the tip liner, and in fact, it was a part that I actually really enjoyed about these Staedtler highlighters. The mile liners actually give me the chance to do either, so I can have the fine line, or I can have like the regular highlighting thing. When it comes to bleeding, I feel like these didn't bleed as much. They still bled a little bit. I haven't been using them that long, so I can't, like, literally I've been using them for a night, so I can't tell you about the longevity of the highlighters or the mile liners, but I can tell you about the longevity of the Staedtler highlighters, and they didn't last very long at all. Granted, I've had them for a while, and I've actually been annotating quite thicker books with them, so that might be contributing to how little is left in the ink, but I personally don't want to be thinking about that when I am highlighting of like, oh, it's a bigger book, so I'm gonna run out of highlighting ink sooner. Like, what? No. And then I do continue with my Staedtler Tri Plus fine liners. These I absolutely love. These have lasted a very long time. The pen I use for black actually is the Pilot Precise V7 RT. I love how smoothly this writes. Like, it's just so smooth and it just glides along the page. So I love this one for this one. I would say though, this does bleed slightly. I think if you write normally, it's not going to bleed that much, but I am very heavy-handed with writing, unfortunately, so it does bleed for me sometimes. Only when I have like a new one, like literally just started using this day. It's the very first day I use the pen. That is when it bleeds for me. Every other time, it's completely fine. But I do love using the Staedtler pens for annotating and drawing lines under text, but also I will write in the color that I underlined. And I love how these write as well. Okay, that's all for the supplies, I believe. I did also at one point have, and I guess I still do own them, but I did used to use the clear post-it notes, but I only used that for Jade City at one point because I didn't know if I wanted to write in them, and that did not work out for me. I don't, just aesthetically, I don't like the look of writing something out on a post-it note and then putting it in the book again, because eventually I'm going to have to lift that post-it note and then stick it back on. It's going to fall. I don't like how blocked off everything is when there's a post-it note on it, and I found that the translucent post-it notes weren't translucent enough. So if I can find the pictures that I had of Jade City when I was annotating with the post-its versus a page of after I had stopped using it. But yeah, it just was not working for me. My brain, it honestly just made me sad looking at it. Like, that's not how my brain picks up the information. Now, finally moving on into my annotating journey. I feel like I should have a drink or something, and I don't. I would say for me, I started annotating text in high school. It was actually a requirement for us to annotate text. And it was highly encouraged that we would annotate our books, but you know, I just wasn't there yet. In high school, I wasn't there for annotating books. When I did do them, I would just write in pencil. So I definitely do recommend that for like a beginner level. If you do have like insecurities when it comes to like writing in your book, you're afraid of making mistakes, I would say use a pencil to start off, see how you feel about writing in the book. And I wrote in pencil because I wasn't comfortable writing in pen. I was afraid of making mistakes, and it totally worked out for me. But I wasn't really annotating for very much. I think that was the first instance of me writing in the page, but then also tabbing it. I didn't have any color codes. I would just stick it in the book and be good. And I was marking it for specifically what my teachers were asking me to look out for. So metaphors, diction, all that stuff. You know, we were working through it and learning how to like analyze text. And so that is what I was marking it for, basically what the teacher was asking me to mark it up for. I think the first instance of me actually annotating and using different colors were with poems. And for those, I actually printed them out and would then annotate them. And again, I was always looking for what my teachers were looking for. So metaphors had their own colors. Syntax and diction had their individual colors. And yeah, it was just specifically for poems. And this was something, these were basically, I'm pretty sure they were assignments. Like, we had to show our teacher our annotated poems. To like, because you know, we were analyzing them and doing essays and stuff. That was the very first example I had in my first time of dipping my toes into annotating, but it didn't really move beyond the classroom for me. In fact, I did not really ever consider annotating books for fun until I had seen Naya Reads and Smiles, her video on annotating books. And when I saw her video, I was like, oh, that makes sense. But I found that I had a very difficult time annotating books for fun. And it was because, as funny as it seems, I was scared of like, the books at school were all these books from like hella long ago. These like literary masterpieces basically that were just like, I mean, as a high school girl, they were old. I was like, whatever, you can't really mess up this book. It's been like printed 1 billion times by now. Like, no one wants these. So I had no problem annotating them, and it was completely fine. When it came to books that were recently published, it was like, but these are new. Like, granted, the copies that I would have of my books for school were like new copies, but the book itself, the story itself, was older. And so for some reason, I had it in my head, like, it was just so hard for me to mess up a new book or to write on a new release book, because I don't know, that just felt less comfortable for me. And again, I was so used to annotating for like educational purposes and for like academia that it was so foreign to try and transfer like what I know from academia and annotating in that sense to annotating for fun. And so that kind of fell right through the wayside. I just did not relate for me. And so I decided to ease myself into it, and I actually started to just tab. I only tabbed, and the very first book that I actually tabbed, the very first time I tried to dip my toe into annotating for fun, was actually for A Court of Mist and Fury. Y'all, look at it. Can you see it? Look at that book. That is hardly annotated at all, mainly because I was like obsessed with the book, so I was just like reading through it. and just trying to have fun, but also it's not color coordinated. I changed colors at some point because I ran out of blue tabs, and so I just switched the pink at the end. There's no highlighting, no underlining, nothing. The tab is just like in the vicinity of an area that I liked. So that is one thing that ended up. So pros for this is that I thought I now know that somewhere on this page is something that I really related to when I first read it, and something that really stood out to me when I first read it. Con of this annotating style is I have no clue what that particular thing is. Something that happens for me when I am annotating this way, when I'm just sticking the tab where I feel, when I am just sticking the tab on the page, is that oftentimes it's not going to be exactly where I want it to be. So if you can see here, I love young Kalia, because here at the end of this paragraph, you see I have a tab. Then at the beginning of this one, literally the next paragraph, I have a tab here. So, did I like this paragraph and then this paragraph as well, and I'm telling myself to continue on here, or did I don't even know. Maybe this tab is just a little too far up and I actually like this part. Who the hell knows? Not I, not me, not I. So, as you can tell, that style does nothing for me. I don't know why I marked that page. You can definitely tell I was new to annotating, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with this form of annotating. If it works for you, then it works for you, and I'm happy for you. Honestly, if you make more sense than me and you actually have the tab, like, I don't know, not back to back. I feel like my tabs that are currently back to back make sense because they're color coordinated, and I'm looking, oh, that could have been it. I could have just been marking this page for one, I could have been marking this paragraph for one thing and marking this top part for another thing. The world may never know though, because I did not color coordinate and I don't have what I liked or what I was looking at underlined. So I don't know. I had no commentary. It was just the tab. This just does not relate to me now. I do think that it was a great way originally because it did show me like ultimately I am connecting with the text, and it is possible to like annotate for fun no matter whatever I was annotating for this time. Honestly at this point it was probably just quotes that I really liked. I like that. I like the idea of highlighting quotes that I like or annotating quotes that I like, but since then I have switched to a color-coded situation. Now, the first book I started to actually write in was actually Priory of the Orange Tree. I didn't grab that book because I never finished annotating it because that book is so thick, and eventually I switched to the audiobook, and right along with that, I was just trying to finish that book, so yeah, no. But also, I had started off with that book with writing in Post-it notes and then sticking that in the page. But I was underlining at that point. So I would underline in the color that it needed. Like I would underline in the color and then stick the tab in that color. And then I would write on the Post-it note what I was thinking and then stick that into the book. Shout out to Priory being such a thick book because I was a good way, not that far through, but I had enough time to realize while I was still reading that book that I didn't like that style. And that is when I was like, you know what, let's just rip off the Band-Aid. And I literally went back to all of my Post-it notes that were in the book and I just wrote them out in the book. At that point in time, I was writing out all my annotations in black ink and then underlining or highlighting them and the pen color of whatever tab was being associated with that particular scene. I have since stopped doing that only because when I go back to the book and when it comes to rereading books and all I see is a bunch of black text surrounding a bunch of black text, again, my brain is really processing this information and really understanding where I was coming from based on the colors. So just writing it out in black, surrounded by black, it my brain doesn't connect coming back to the text. And ultimately, for me personally, annotating is always going to be about coming back to the story, coming back to the text. There are times where I'll be upset. I love going back in my romance books and seeing the romance scenes that I really like. What is it called? A Court of Silver Flames. Great example. Like every little step in Nesta and Castian's relationship, I was marking. Like, it's something I can then go back to and just get those warm and cozy feelings all over again. So ultimately for me, annotating is all about coming back to the story. What did I find was most important in the story? Especially if this is like the first book in a series. Going back to that first book before the second book comes out and seeing what I had marked up and what world building and character development had I marked up. Speaking of which, let's talk about my tabbing system. So here we have, like I said, my 10 tabs. 9 colors, 10 tabs. So first up we have pink. Pink is always, always, always going to be for love. Oh, and I should say all of these colors are always going to mean this. Pink is always going to be love. When I look at the color pink, I think about love. It is always going to be for the quotes I love, for a scene that I love for that character. It's going to be something that character said that I love. Like if a character is standing up for themselves, it's going to be annotated in pink, and that's going to be a moment I want to return to if I ever think about this book and how happy it makes me. I want to go back to the scene where my good sis finally stood up for herself. I want to go back to the scene where the male love interest defended his woman. Like that, oh, love it, love it, love it. Pink's tab. Orange for me, y'all know, any chance I get to say it, I'm going to say it. Orange is my favorite color. I look at the color orange and it makes me so happy. I think it's just bright, it's great, but orange to me is just always going to be a reflection of me and myself. I don't know if I've ever shared the story of why orange is my favorite color to you all, but if I haven't, orange is my favorite color because when I was little and I wasn't quite aware of what colors were what, like I knew the names of the color, I knew what colors looked like, but I didn't all necessarily match the right color to the right name. And a great example of that is when everyone would ask me what my favorite color is, I would tell them at little 3-year-old Kalia, like 4-year-old Kalia who didn't quite know her colors, would say that her favorite color was orange because orange is the color of Winnie the Pooh. You see this yellow ass bear? Winnie the Pooh is yellow. Little Kalia thought he was orange. Not because I thought he looked like this orange tab here. No, no, no. I thought yellow was orange. So I kept telling people that my favorite color was orange because I thought that that was the color of Winnie the Pooh. It is not, but by the time I realized my grand mistake, I was fine with it. I was like, you know what, orange is a cool color too, so it doesn't even matter. Yeah, just having that story of orange, and then like anytime I see orange, I just think it's very beautiful. I love it so much. It makes me happy. So the orange tab actually is for moments and for quotes that I find very relatable. It also is a chance for me to insert myself into the text, and anytime I have a theory that I want to highlight or just a comment that I want to comment that doesn't necessarily fit within any of the other categories. Now, for me personally, theories are kind of a part of the game when it comes to books. Not in the sense that I'm over here like reading every part of the text like, ooh, this means this and whatever. No, meaning literally I will walk away from the text and be thinking about it, and my mind will go so far out there, like literally just their mom that has been dead for the entirety of this story isn't really dead. It's just gonna come back from the dead and stir some up. Like literally my brain goes above and beyond in creating the most out of the world story in my head as the plot twist for the story, and then as I continue reading, I'll just like water it down to meet the author where they're at, or maybe the author will meet me where I'm at. And I love when a crazy sees crazy, because I see you and clearly you see me. I am exactly who your target audience is. But anyways, like I said, anytime that I want to comment that, I'll mark it in orange. And anytime that I find something that relates to a theory that I have stated previously, again, I will highlight it or underline it in orange. Yellow, to me, is always going to be funny. It reminds me of a yellow happy face. It reminds me of the yellow smiley and laughing emojis. So yellow. Always going to be for moments that I found funny, moments that I laughed. Green, for me, this is one that has changed. Before, when I was annotating like prior to the orange tree, like I said, this is the first time that I was annotating really heavily. It was green was world building and blue was character development and new characters that were introduced. I have since changed this because I was finding that some books I would have way more green and hardly any blue, or I would have a ton of blue but hardly any green, and I didn't really like that imbalance, and so it just never made sense to have a separate tag, or to have a separate tab for that, especially when it came to me needing the Amazon like basic tabs that were only 6. Having 2 separate tags for something that was rarely ever used. When there was high world building, and usually with world building I do include like plot things, because yeah, I don't know how to explain this, but basically when I notice something like in like political books, when I notice something that I would think of as like world building and world growth has to do with moving the plot along. So for a plot heavy book that doesn't focus that much on characters, I would hardly have any blue tabs, yet I dedicated this whole section to blue tabs, and I'm not using these tabs. I could have just kept it as green. So what I do is I use a green tab, but I have 2 different green pins. The dark green pin is always going to be for world building, and then the light green pin is always going to be for characters and character development. Like I said, this is something I had to adapt to when I went to the smaller tabbing system and only had 6 tabs. I couldn't just like dedicate any color to any tabs because I had less colors to work with. I decreased. I had to go down from 9 tabs to then 6. I needed to make some adjustments. So next up we have blue. Like I said, this used to be my character building and character development. I have since changed this to sad moments. I actually like seeing the times that I was sad. As you all know, I cry in books quite often, and so I have decided to start marking that. And I like to see what books have put me through a quite emotional journey, and what books have made me cry, which books have made me sad. And then I'll even go back to some sad moments, because sometimes it's sad because it's something that I can relate to, and I'll feel healing in that moment, and the ability to reflect on the sadness the character is feeling, but also how it relates to sadness in my own life. This happened a lot in Legendborn. Honestly, I don't remember if I annotated Legendborn. I think I did, but this happened a lot in Legendborn when Bree was talking about the grief she felt in losing her mother, and yeah, so I definitely felt that. I think, and I also felt it in Clara and the Sun, because that was a book that had surprised me in the grief that Clara was feeling as a main character. So there was blue tabs on that, and again there was blue tabs because I could relate to that sadness, and I could relate to and I found myself tearing up and wanting to cry in moments that I wasn't expecting to want to cry, but it truly deeply resonated with me. So blue now means sad. These purples, also things that have changed. I don't really see the point of there being 2 purples. Fun fact, I don't like the color purple. I really don't. Lavender, I could vomit. But the fact that there's 2, I mean, I gotta do something with it. So this darker purple, I have decided, finally, I used to alternate, and like for one book, this would be hate, or then the next book, the dark purple would be hate, just so I could use the purples. But I have since just decided the dark purple, also known as violet, by the way, that's the name of the actual color, is just for things that I hate, and I do mark things that I hate because I think that that is also valuable. For example, in the book Bunny, can you guys see it? My face is in the way. I hope it is focusing and you guys can see it ultimately. As you can see, there's a ton of purple tabs. Not necessarily because I hated a ton of things about this book, but there were scary moments in the books. There were moments where I was like, oh hell nah. So those oh hell nah moments got a purple tab. Like, I was like, can you get the fuck out, bitch? So they got a purple tab. Cause high alert, hello, red flags blazing through this shit. Purple tab. Next up, we have this tab. This is my freebie. If we're at the end of our rope and I don't have any more of these tabs and any of the extra tabs that I have, then this will turn into hate. But more often than not, I save this color for a theme that is particularly being shown in that particular book. So for example, for House of Sky and Breath, I use this light purple to for instances of grief and trauma. And again, that's because that is something that is particularly delved on and approached in that book. The Poppy Word was another one where that was an example of trauma and like side effects of war. So next we have orange. We already discussed. Oh, there's more oh, I forgot the yellow also duplicates. So that's 8 tabs. Anyways, you get it. Now red. Like I said, red is one that is actually quite special to me. Not in this, I don't use the red tab very often though, because it is literally for a very specific reason. Red tabs are only for my romance reads or my or reads that have romance in them, and this is specifically for relationship growth. Like those little moments where the relationship has finally progressed a little bit. I love going back to these scenes. I love going back to their first kiss. Like I love going back to the first time you know, rated X content. I love going back to those because it's a progress of their relationship. And again, I do reread romances quite often, and so I'll admit, when I am reading the books, I will be reading a book, and if it's a romance book, I might skip to a couple chapters and read the first page of each chapter, waiting to see something like, I can't believe I just kissed him, I can't believe I just did this, I feel so much remorse for that night we spent together last night. I'll be like, that's where I need to be to. I need to get there. I need to get to her moment of regret, because that means on a whim, they decided to kiss. On a whim, they decided to hit the sheets. They did something, and I want to get there. So when I'm rereading it, I can see, okay, this is my goal for the day. I need to get to this tab right here, this first red tab. I need to get to here today. And again, that is just very specific to me. Like, literally could not be more specific of a tab color that I needed. And when I didn't have the red tab anymore, I could tell, and I missed that in those reads. Like, all those times are just marked in pink, and they get lost within all the other pink tabs. I have some books here that I wanted to show you. Like I said, this honestly feels like a full circle moment, because here is, like I said, the very first book that I ever even attempted to annotate for fun, and it was just the tabs, and that is A Court of Mr. Fairy with Sarah J. Maas. And one of the very last books that I annotated, actually the very last book I annotated was Bunny, but one of the very last books that I annotated was actually House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. Look at the difference in those books. Like, literally, hold on. They want to find the viewfinder wants to find my face so bad. Literally, those books could not be more different. Now, I definitely annotate a lot more heavier than I did before, and that is completely fine and valid. I just want to highlight and emphasize, like, truly, if you leave this video, please let this be the message of this video. Both of these ways are completely valid annotating styles. You do not have to be annotating every single page. You having a like empty annotated book is completely fine. Another very common question that comes with annotating is, when do you use pens versus when do you use highlighters? So I'm a person that loves a lot. If I see a quote that I love, I'm going to underline it. If I find a quote that I'm in love with, like, oh, you hit me in the heart, I love this so much, this is one of my absolute loved moments, this is my favorite moment, this is my favorite scene, one of my favorites, then I'm going to highlight it. And that means that when I am flipping through the book, because oftentimes I'm not just like going through each page, I'm just going like this. Oh, I had the thing way over here. But I'll just go like this through the book and I'll see, oh, I found a highlighted scene. And now this scene is actually, it's a scene that's highlighted, not just a quote. But I know that something happened right here that I see what it was, and yes. Like, literally, yes. So I'll see it and I'll be like, okay, I absolutely love this moment. When it comes to funny things, so like the yellow tab, more often than not, it's going to be highlighted instead of underlined, but some of them are underlined. If it's underlined, that means I saw it, registered it in my mind as funny, but it was like a moment. Versus the times that are the times that are highlighted, I absolutely laughed out loud. Like, it actually came out of my body. I laughed there. A great example of a book that had me laughing a lot, The Black Veins. I think that this book is hilarious, specifically for the character Storm. When I ultimately reread this book, I'm going to like completely re-annotate it or like add a different tab that is specifically for Storm and her funny moments, because good sis had so many. She is a star. But this book actually reminded me of another thing that can happen, specifically when it comes to my orange and pink tabs in particular. Sometimes I don't know what I love more than what I relate to, so I will like underline it in, or I will like tab it in orange, say, but maybe I underlined it in pink, and that then alerts my brain that not only did I relate to this, but I actually loved this quote. I loved this moment. And then when I see that something is both orange and pink, I can go, oh, not only did I relate to this moment, but I really loved how the author decided to vocalize it and decided to write it out. Oh, see? Oh, this is a great one. The hell? Okay, clearly this wants to come off, so it's going to come off. You can see here, please don't read the text. Don't get me sued. This is the part that is doubly blue and pink, so it is a very sad moment, but I really loved the way that SJM had written it out. So it hurt so bad I loved it, basically. And apparently it happened more than once. Because again, I have another pink and blue tab. There are also times when I will, and I haven't done this in a very long time, this was specifically for this book, but that's Monday's Not Coming. Red tabs in here have nothing to do with romance. These are my theories, actually. This was the first, or not the first book, but it was one of the only books that I actually cared to actually write out my theories and to come back to you. And as you can see, well, that's probably a bad one to show you. But as you can see, this was before I had started to color code my writing. So the text is all, or the text that I wrote is all in black. If this book was one that I had heavily annotated, then I would not have liked to come back to this one because like my brain just wouldn't have processed it. But this was one that I like had intentionally not wanted to annotate too heavily. Which actually brings me to my next question that I get quite often. Do I annotate every book? No, the hell I do not. In fact, I try not to. I honestly go into books not wanting to annotate them. Unless you are a fantasy book or a book that is a part of a series, I don't want to annotate it. I know a lot of people say it's a feelings thing for them. They wait until the first 50 to 100 pages to find out. I'm not like that. It's literally, for me, it's like, I'll be reading, and if there is something that impacts me, there's a quote I love, there's a quote I relate to, something that was deeply sad, something that a character did that I truly hated, like a character I think that I'm going to hate in this, or something, a comment about society, well, those will be in orange, but if it's a comment about society and about something I hate about society and something that is being highlighted about the ugliness of society, and I'm gonna want to come back to that, it's gonna get highlighted. So there's never going to be a time when I keep myself back from annotating a book, but I definitely don't go into books thinking I'm going to highlight them to full capacity and it's going to look like the Dragon Republic. Like, no, I don't go into every book like that. In fact, I try to actively not go into books like that, especially since I am equal parts a contemporary and romance reader as I am a fantasy reader. Fantasy books usually have a lot of annotation added onto them, like I annotate quite heavily, versus like romance and contemporary. I don't need to annotate that heavily. I don't need that much from them. I just need to know what my favorite moments are, and I can just mark those very easily. I personally I would love to just highlight real quick. This is a book that I'm currently reading. I'm almost done with this close to okay, right? I can count how many tabs I have in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tabs. Doesn't look like I quite made 10. It looks like I have 9 tabs in this book. I think this is completely valid and okay. And this is a book that I was not planning on annotating, and in fact, don't want to annotate it, but there are quotes in here that I absolutely want to come back to. There are times that I absolutely want to come back to in this book. And so, while it's not a book that I'm necessarily going out of my way to annotate, like I set up to annotate, I do want to come back to it eventually. I would just like to highlight that whether you're annotating a book like this, or if you're annotating a book like this, it is completely fine. Both ways are completely valid. It is about what reflects onto you. What do you respond most to? There are also differences in how I annotate books depending on what they are. So clearly for my the colors will always mean the same thing, but clearly for my contemporary and romance books, I'm never going to have green tabs, or I'm never going to have a green tab for world building. And in fact, there's probably going to be not that many tabs directly about character development. Like if it's romance, the character development more often than not is going to be about their development as a relation, like as a couple. And I'm not going to find that all too important to stop and annotate. Usually I want to just consume those stories and sit like in one sitting. Like I said, Monday's Not Coming got to be its own thing. Poetry, again, is completely its own thing. This is a collection of poetry. I only marked the poems that I liked, and I marked them for the colors that I like them. So I know with this yellow tab that I like this poem because I found it funny. These 2 orange tabs, I like the poem because I found them relatable, and I marked them on the exact stanza I found relatable. All these pink tabs, I just love them. I love the entirety of that poem. Blue tab down here means that there's a specific stanza within this poem that I found very sad. This one blue tab up here means that entire poem I liked because I liked for its sadness and its beauty within its sadness. For nonfiction, this is completely different. I actually annotated for undergrad. I can't find an example of a book that I've annotated recently for my nonfiction. But these, you see, I have post-it notes for this, but most of them are actually just like instances of tabs that I didn't have, so I just used a post-it note. That's completely fine. But as you can see, it's like, I do have commentary on some of them, so this one has commentary on it. And then I highlighted it. Usually for nonfiction, I will just highlight lines, information that I think is important, stuff that I want to come back to. Now I have evolved in annotating my nonfiction to have 3 colors, and that is, I will always have a tab I will always have orange tabs for times that I find relatable, especially when it comes to memoirs. Those memoirs are very impactful to me, are ones where I can relate to the author's story, and so I'm going to have those tabs for relatable. I'm going to pick a random tab for just things that I like. It doesn't matter then what color is what. I will mark it in the book, but I'll have another tab that I don't care which color of like important information, and then I will have a random tab for things that I want to do more research on. For example, I haven't yet gotten the chance to go back and annotate this one, but for the, oh no, my note fell. For Twisted, the Tangled History of Black Hair Culture, I will be going back and annotating it for, mainly I'm looking for those times where I wanted to do more research. I do want to mark them and like figure out more research that I want to do for it. If you don't know, the very first video that has ever hit my channel is a documentary I did on natural black hair in the workplace. And this book actually delved upon a lot of topics I already knew about, but there were some that I still didn't know about, so I do want to go back and research that further. Natural hair is a really big deal to me, and I like doing research on it, so I want to expand my research on it. That is my new way of evolving into how I annotate my nonfiction. This is something that is very new to me because I hadn't been reading that much nonfiction prior to this year. But this year I did make it a resolution of mine to read a nonfiction every month. And I found that while I do love reading memoirs, memoirs are not the only nonfiction that I read. And sometimes I'm also looking and seeking nonfiction that would teach me something. So I want to expand in my research, and sometimes a topic will be discussed or brought up that I want to do more research on. So yeah, that's the nonfiction, and specifically for that. So there's 3 tabs for nonfiction. The only one that is going to be consistent is the orange tab. That is always going to mean that I relate to whatever the writer has discussed. The other 2 tabs can change in color depending on whatever color is left on my tabbing thing, because I do run out of tabs quite frequently. This is actually the tabbing that I have now and that I use. As you can see, the pink tabs don't match, and this is from an older, like, what is this called? Like an older sheet of tabs that I, for somehow, some way, didn't finish the pink tabs. That's very rare. And so I just put the last of those pink tabs onto here because I had already run out of the pink tabs on this sheet. So I just switched them over to this one. Clearly I'm about to run out of these sheets as well. I'm about to run out of this first sheet of orange and then the green as well. Oh, and you can see I had already taken the green off of this one to place onto this one. I find that that's a lot easier to do instead of carrying a bunch of different tabbing sheets. Just carrying one and taking off the tabs and placing it onto this one. For me, my annotation is an extension of journaling. It is an extension of just putting my heart onto the page and truly interacting with the story and becoming a part of the story with my comments and how I view things. And I think that that is completely fine. And rarely ever am I going into a text saying I'm going to analyze this. For some of them, I do have a particular tab that is specifically for themes within the story, but I don't often go into books looking for themes, at least not for the first read. I don't go into it looking for themes and looking to analyze the text. I go into it to experience the text. And so I am much more of an annotator that seeks emotions. I annotate based on my emotions. Like I said, the like color coding is based on my emotions. Love, relatability, laughter, world building, and character development is the only one that is not character based. Sadness, hatred. Again, we have themes sometimes, occasionally, but this is a color that doesn't get used very often. And then we're back at like romance and just feelings. I feel a lot, and so I have definitely inserted that into my annotating method. My feelings are what are most important to me. When I go back into a text, I don't care necessarily about how the literary excellence it is. I don't care about like the metaphors and everything. I care about how I felt when I was in that moment. I care about how my first reading experience felt. I care about my feelings. And so I'm definitely more feelings based in my annotation. Can very, like, if that is how you want to annotate, very valid. I definitely recommend doing that. I don't think that annotation has to be this like great analyzing literary method. And I think for me, when I thought of it as that way and I thought I had to do that, that's when I got stuck in like the academia space. And I felt like bringing academia into something that was supposed to be just for fun and just supposed to be for a hobby. And as a person that had always been so into school and scholarly work, it is very important for me personally to have that disconnect between the two worlds of like, this is for school and this is for academia versus this is just for fun. And there is still learning that can happen when you're having fun, but what was most important to me when I am having fun and when it is my hobby of reading is just how I'm feeling. If you are interested in annotating, feel free to reach out to me and I'll love to talk to you about it, because I think that this is a really cool way to read and to consume the story. Like I said, this is kind of like this when I started annotating and like color coding my annotations and everything. Like when I started to do more with my annotations, that's when it felt more like an extension of my journaling to me. It was me interacting with the story. It was me really diving deep into my emotions, especially when it comes to those stories like Clara and the Sun, or honestly, the book that I'm currently reading, This Close to Okay, it is moments where I get to reflect on myself and my life and my emotions and how what the character is going through has impacted me in whatever ways. So getting to like journal on a story I think is really cool. Alright, so that is everything for today. That is how I am currently annotating, although that can be adjusted at any time in any space. So if my annotation does change at any time, I will do a new video. But for now, that is all for this video. And if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed my face, my voice, my actionness, go ahead and press that like button down below and press the subscribe button and bell notification if you'd like to be notified when I upload. If you'd like to stay connected with me as I would like to stay connected with you, I of course will have my social medias linked down below as well. And if you'd like to support this channel further, I'll have my Amazon wishlist and my Ko-fi link down below as well. Of course, if you want to talk anything annotating, annotation, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I can't wait to talk to you all down below. And with no further ado, thank you all for 300 subscribers. I hope to continue to grow this community with you all. And with no further ado, I believe that is everything, although I am probably forgetting something because I always forget something. But bye guys!